Hello and welcome to this lecture, and in this lecture what we will do is that we will learn how to handle button clicks in your Android application. So what we will do here is that first we will clean up the layout. So what you need to do is that you do need to go to text and you do need to delete this text view right here, because we will be adding a new text view right from scratch. And also you need to remove the background from here. So once this thing is done, we could go ahead and create a new design. So we will again drag a text view and drop it right over here, and we will assign some properties to it by going over here. So if you have a look at here, the text view is going to have an ID. So this thing right here is the property which is called as an ID, which is going to uniquely identify your text view. So whenever you need to define an ID for any of the element in your layout, what you need to do is that you need to type in Android:ID, then equals to, in double quotes, @+ID/ and the ID name. So let's say in this case we want to name the ID as message, so you could type in MESSAGE over here, and that's actually going to change the ID of this text view. Now the reason for adding this ID to this text view is that in this case, or in this application, what we want to do is that we want to have a button here, and when we click this button, the text in this text view should be able to change. So for that reason, we need to identify this text view uniquely, and that's why we basically go ahead and add an ID to this particular text view. Okay, so once this thing is done, let's also make changes to the text of the text view. So let's say this thing says hello there. So this is what is the current text in the text view. Now what we will do is that we will also go ahead and add up a button to this particular layout. So you need to switch to the design view. And if you look at the widgets over here, as you could see right below the text view, you have a button. So I'm going to drag a button and drop it right in the center. So as you could see, now you have a button over here. And now what we want to do here is that when the user clicks this particular button, the text of this text view should change. So there are multiple ways of handling a button click in Android, and one of the ways is by adding an onClick method to this particular button. So what you essentially need to do is that you need to specify a method for this particular button such that when you click this particular button, that method is going to execute its own code. So in order to add an onClick to this button, there are actually two ways you could do that. So you could go to the design view, you could select the button, and if you have a look at here, there is an option to add onClick over here. So here you could type in the method name. So that is one way of doing that. And another way is by going to the XML code and go here and specify a property by typing Android onClick, and you could specify the method name over here. So right now we don't have any method over here. So what we will do is that we will simply go to main activity, and here we will specify a new method. So let's type in public, and let's name, this is going to be void, and let's name this method as button clicked, because that is what is going to happen when you click this button. And in here we are going to define the code which we want to execute to change the text of this particular text view right here. So now what we do is that we also pass a view to this method. So we type view v. And now the next thing which we need to do is that we actually need to import the view. And now to import view, what you could do is that you could go over here and type in import android.view.view, and that's actually going to solve our issue. And now the next thing which we need to do is that as we do need to change the text view over here, what we need to do is that we need to get the reference to this particular text view. Now in order to get reference to this text view, we do need to have access to the ID of this particular text view. So the ID of this particular text view is message. So what we do is that to get an access to this text view from the XML code in the Java code, we type in text view, and let's name this text view as text view itself. So we type text view equals, and then we need to typecast this thing to text view again. So we again type text view. Then what we do is that we use the find view by ID method to basically find that particular view. So we type find view by ID, and in here you need to specify the ID of that particular text view, which is in this case message. So to get an access to that ID, we type r.id, and the ID is equal to message. So we are going to select message over here and end the statement with a semicolon. So this line of code is what actually gets a reference to that particular text view. So now once we have access to that particular text view, we could pretty much do anything with that particular text view. So what we want to do is that, let's say on click of the button, we actually want to change the text view's text to some other message. So what you could do is that you could get the access to this text view by typing text view dot set text, and set text is actually a method which basically is going to set the text of that particular text view. So in here what you could do is that you could specify some text over here. So let's say I'm going to type in button clicked. So once this thing is done, you're pretty much good to go. So you need to save the code, and now what you need to do is that you basically need to attach this method, which is the button click method, to the on click of that particular button. So you simply copy the method name, go back to the code over here and go in the button, and over here you just specify the method, which is button clicked. And what this is going to do is that it's actually going to associate an on click method with this button, so that whenever you click this button, the code written inside this method is going to get executed. So once this thing is done, to check your code, what you could do is that you could save the code, you could run your application on the emulator and see how it works. So as you could see, the application is up and running. So this is the text here and this is the button, and when you click this button, as you could see, the text changed to button clicked. So we have successfully created the button, and we have successfully been able to modify the contents of the text view when you basically go ahead and click that particular button. So that's it for this lecture, and I hope you guys were able to understand how to change or how to basically handle button clicks in Android. And we have also learned one more important part, that is basically how to go ahead and design the logic behind your activity. So in this case, what we have done here is that we have provided a response to the user interaction. So for example, the user interacted with the Android application by clicking on the button, and we provided the response to the user by changing this particular text. So that's it for this lecture, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.